Jack took the bouquet of roses brought for his wife and pulled out a note from it. Written in beautiful, bold handwriting was, "To beloved Catherine with tenderness, Alexander." Jack closed his eyes, clenching his teeth tightly, feeling the pain and resentment filling his entire body. So it was true, and those text messages were not just someone's prank. He poured water into a vase and placed the bouquet in it. Then he put the note back in its place. His wife was supposed to see it as soon as she returned. Afraid to prematurely unleash his boiling rage, Jack quietly walked into the bedroom and collapsed heavily onto the bed, holding his head in his hands. Right now, he hated his wife and wanted to scream it in her face. Yet just 2 weeks ago, he had professed his love to her, believing she loved him too. But Jack had no idea that the harsh reality was much scarier than just infidelity. And soon not only their lives, but also the life of their young son would hang by a thread. Catherine cast a displeased glance at her husband, who skillfully pulled into the parking lot and parked the car. "Jack, what if we crashed into him? We barely missed each other by a hair's breadth," Catherine exclaimed. Jack, as usual, half-jokingly replied to his wife as he hurriedly left the car. "Not by a hair's breadth, dear, by 2.5. But hey, we made it." Not waiting for him to open the door for her, Catherine, still angry with her husband, got out herself. Then she opened the rear door and urged her son, "Get out, we are running late. Hurry." Jack retrieved a suitcase from the trunk and headed towards the airport building. His wife and son hurried after him. "Seriously, why rush like that, Jack?" Catherine couldn't calm down. She always feared fast driving and never allowed her husband to exceed the speed limit. But this time, he had to hurry because Catherine and Roger were running late for their flight. And Robin, her longtime friend, was already waiting for them at the airport. "Listen, why arrive 2 hours early, Catherine?" Jack didn't want to give up his stance either. "We've always managed to get everywhere on time," she replied, tired of arguing but continuing out of stubbornness just to not give in to her husband. "If I hadn't driven so fast, we wouldn't have made it anywhere," Jack countered, irking his wife further. "If we had crashed, we wouldn't have made it anywhere at all." She yelled at him, ignoring the people around them, then turned to her son. "Faster," I said. "I don't think Dad was driving fast," the boy remarked, but his father immediately scolded him calmly. "Roger, don't argue with Mom, and don't yell at the child," Catherine demanded. 5 minutes later, they were already in the terminal, and Jack nodded in relief to Robin, who sighed lightly. "Why did it take you so long?" she asked with a slight reproach. "Don't ask." He waved her off. "We are running late." She shook her head and hurried after Jack and Catherine, realizing that it wasn't the time for lengthy explanations. Their farewell was hurried. "Text me when you land, Roger," Jack requested his son. "Okay." The boy smiled at him. "Take care of Mom," Jack added, and then shouted to everyone, "Goodbye. Love you all. If you have any trouble with the presentation, call." "All right," Robin responded. Jack promised, "Sure, and don't rush back." Catherine couldn't resist one last jab as she turned to look at her husband, but he had already disappeared into the airport chaos, and she didn't see him. As Robin sent her bag onto the security conveyor belt, she smirked. "Did you two have another argument?" Catherine couldn't contain her dissatisfaction. "Not only did he not come with us, place all your bags on the conveyor belt," the airport staff interrupted her. Catherine complied and continued, "But he also forgot to see us off. He drove like a maniac and yelled at me." "Robin, we almost crashed." "Catherine." Robin tried to calm her friend. "He has a presentation in 2 weeks. He loves you. What more do you want?" "He loves me," Catherine muttered discontentedly. She truly didn't know what she wanted from her husband. Maybe just for him to always be by her side. The flight went smoothly, and the resort town welcomed the travelers with beautiful summer weather. The sun was scorching, and Catherine's only desire was to quickly reach the water and immerse herself in the azure coolness of the sea. Roger shared his mother's dreams, and as soon as they checked into the hotel, he immediately ran to the beach. Keeping an eye on her son, Catherine settled into a wicker chair under a huge umbrella, with Robin beside her. Both women were immediately drawn to the young handsome volleyball players, who were enjoying their favorite game on the beach. Catherine smiled faintly, inadvertently singling out a tan man in shorts, a cap, and black sunglasses from the rest. With each movement, his muscles rippled beneath his sun-kissed skin, and the pent around his neck glinted, reflecting the sunlight. With graceful hands, the stranger served the ball and skillfully volleyed it over the net. At one point, he dove for it, and after a successful return, he couldn't keep his balance and, laughing, fell onto the golden sand, covering it with his body. Feeling somewhat flustered for some reason, Catherine quickly looked away. Then, to return to reality, she said to Robin, who was also watching the volleyball players with curiosity, "Hey, where's Roger? It's time to get him out of the water." Before she could get up, her friend preempted her. "Sit tight. I'll go take a dip and check on him." And the handsome volleyball player turned out to be right next to Catherine. He cast a fleeting glance at her before continuing the game. But when the ball ended up at her feet a minute later, he approached and, ignoring his friend's shouts, stopped in front of her. To break the awkward silence, Catherine started the conversation. "You play beautifully," she said, lowering her gaze but then raising it again, involuntarily admiring the man tossing the elastic ball in his hands. "Thank you." He flashed a bright smile. "Your serve is excellent," Catherine remarked, not understanding why she felt embarrassed in front of the stranger. "Do you play volleyball too?" he asked, not intending to end the conversation. "I used to play, back in college," Catherine casually replied. Then she added, "Alexander, could you pass the ball back?" A voice from one of the volleyball players was heard. They clearly didn't like that the game was interrupted, and their friend shifted his attention to some woman. Alexander, without turning around, threw them the ball and immediately took a glass from a passing tray. "Oh, your water," Catherine smiled. "And bring me some juice," Alexander called after the server, and then sat down on the chair next to Catherine. "Aren't you going to finish the game?" she asked. "Consider it a timeout. By the way, would you like to play with me?" Alexander unexpectedly offered. "I need a partner. I haven't played in ages." Catherine shrugged. "Come on." The man's voice sounded very convincing. "Let's do it." He stood up and extended his hand to her. "Well," Catherine smiled and placed her hand in his palm. A few minutes later, when Robin approached her table, she smiled, watching her friend playing with new acquaintances. But Catherine saw nothing. She was too engrossed in the game and her partner, who didn't leave her side for a moment. That evening, when they returned to their room, Robin couldn't resist and said to her friend, "Catherine, I didn't know you played so well." Catherine emerged from the shower, drying her wet hair with a towel. "Well, I didn't know myself," she sighed. "I used to play many years ago. Turns out, my hands still remember." "I noticed how the guys were eyeing you." Robin smoothly changed the subject. "Oh, come on." Catherine accepted Robin's compliment, unable to resist a smug smile. "Yeah, right." Robin continued. "You're all athletic, sun-kissed, and when you spiked the ball, you screamed, just like Andrea Drews." The women laughed. "So, that's why Alexander and I won," Catherine joked. "Alexander, the guy with the pendant?" Robin raised her eyebrows. "He's something." "Nothing much." Catherine took hand cream and started rubbing it between her palms. "Nothing interesting, really." Robin smirked. "Yeah." Catherine responded instantly to her question. "Well, should I go after him?" Robin looked her friend in the eyes. "Sure, go ahead. You're a free woman." Catherine nodded calmly. Robin straightened up and hugged her friend by the shoulders. "And what about you? Why are you so sluggish? Sad all the time. Let's go dancing. Come on. Let's go dancing tonight. Let's take this, Alexander. Catherine, yeah. Catherine hid her smile. And who will we leave Roger with? We'll put Roger to bed. Robin decided not to back down. For once, let's escape without the husband. This reminder instantly spoiled Catherine's mood. She stood up and said, not hiding her annoyance, I'm always on vacation without my husband. In case you've forgotten. I haven't forgotten that Jack works, Robin calmly remarked. Then she added playfully, men work, women relax. Catherine, remember how we used to potty in college? Remember, let's party. Catherine, come on, let's go. Catherine laughed. Robin was always so energetic. She wanted to joke about it, but before she could, there was a knock on the door, and the maid entered the room. Sorry, you asked for towels. We didn't ask for anything. Robin's face suddenly changed, and she jumped up, confronting the maid. Why are you coming in without permission? Did you even knock? I didn't hear it. Are you talking to me? Catherine hurriedly intervened in the unpleasant conversation. Robin, I asked the maid to bring towels. Thank you, miss. Robin's friend's words didn't calm her down, and she continued to scold the stunned maid. What are you staring at? Turn around and get out of here. The maid didn't need to be asked twice and, not understanding what she had done wrong, left with her head down. Meanie. Robin spat after her spitefully. Catherine looked at her in surprise. Robin, why did you lash out at her like that? Because they've become too bold. Catherine. Robin shouted with an angry, distorted face, but then immediately softened into a smile. Oh, what a nice sweater. You should wear it today. She pressed the sweater to Catherine's chest and adjusted the straps. Like this. Yeah. Catherine chuckled. All the guys will be intimidated. They'll be blinded. Catherine, her friend assured her. I'm telling you, they'll be blinded. Will you wear it? No. How about this? Maybe you know what? Catherine turned to the wardrobe. Come here. What? Robin hurried to her friend, and they started going through her wardrobe together. Catherine chose a lilac t-shirt and a dark skirt that perfectly accentuated her figure. She wanted to look good, but not overly so. And from the look in Alexander's eyes, who was clearly waiting for her, she understood she made the right choice. They sat at a table, and Alexander offered her a light cocktail. Their conversation was also light and non-committal. Anyway, as one of my friends says, Alexander was saying, we buy air, sell air, make money out of thin air, and then we plant them back. Simple business. Now, tell me, what do you do? I'm a translator. Catherine took a sip of her refreshing drink, and Alexander clearly wanted to know as much as possible about his new acquaintance. I sit in meetings like these and watch you sell air to each other. Catherine joked. Then she added more seriously. I also translate scientific documentation for my husband. And who's our husband? Alexander played along, imitating a famous movie character. Is he a wizard? Almost, Catherine said with some pride. He's a biochemist. That's cool. Alexander extended his respect. He's involved. Catherine paused for a moment, preparing to accurately name Jack's research topic, in using embryonic stem cells for regenerating vital organs. A stem cell is an immature cell capable of self-renewal and developing into specialized cells of the body. She quoted a fragment from her husband's scientific article and laughed. Don't be surprised. I'm just translating this presentation for him. So, if something's cut off, it can be restored later. Alexander inquired. Well, roughly speaking, yes, Catherine explained. You implant such a cell and get, well, for example, a new liver. If you have problems with it, Alexander put on a serious face and turned to his friend, who happened to be nearby their table. Comrade, do you have any liver problems? Nothing. Everything's fine, the friend replied. Catherine laughed. And Alexander raised his glass. Toast themselves. Hey, why didn't your husband come to relax? He asked, throwing in an unexpected question. He's preparing for a competition for a major grant. Catherine adjusted a lock of hair that had strayed from her hairstyle. If he wins it, he won't win. Alexander's voice sounded sharp and even a bit coarse. Why not? A light smile disappeared from Catherine's face. Because he already won. Alexander said just as seriously and smiled, dispelling the shadow that had clouded Catherine's eyes. The most beautiful woman in the world. He can't always be winning. Shall we dance? Where's Robin? Catherine asked. What does it matter? Alexander clearly didn't want to talk about her friend. Sorry. One of Alexander's acquaintances bumped into them. Watch it, man. Alexander gave him a displeased look. Guys, you're the best. Just the best. The guy suddenly remembered the morning volleyball. Better, really. Awesome. Catherine didn't hear him anymore. She was dancing, looking into Alexander's eyes. Laughing nervously, she suddenly confessed to him. You know, volleyball. Now dancing. It's a long-forgotten feeling for me. Like in college, a long-forgotten feeling. He asked gently. Yeah. She didn't want to say more. Not bad already. What about some new ones? He picked her up and spun her around, holding her tightly. The magical night was followed by an equally magical morning. Alexander and Catherine rode on a small scooter to a secluded beach, where they could be alone together. There, they could freely work, exchange kisses and hugs, and forget about everything in the world, indulging in an unexpected and intense, yet fleeting love affair. The plane landed on time, and Catherine, barely leaving the terminal, immediately found herself in her husband's arms. Hey, Jack's eyes sparkled with happiness, and Catherine genuinely hugged him, confessing, I missed you so much. He leaned down to his son, reaching out his hands. Hey, hi, Dad. Roger was also glad to see his father. Hello. Jack repeated and kissed Robin on the cheek. Hello. Ready to go. Man, I missed you guys. So happy, so beautiful. He glanced at his wife. Is that a new pendant you're wearing? Catherine touched the pendant and shrugged shyly. Yeah, I bought it. Beautiful. Jack complimented her purchase. Seeing her friend's embarrassment, Robin hurried to distract Jack. So, how's your project? Are you ready for the presentation? Oh, the project. Catherine exhaled, and Jack, paying no attention to it, replied to Robin. Well, yeah, everything's almost ready. I just have a few minor details. Still, I need your help, okay? So I'll go to the ministry tomorrow morning, and then to you, right? Robin clarified. Yeah, agreed. Jack started handling the suitcases, and Roger, taking advantage of a free moment, boasted to his father. We went diving with scuba gear. No way. Saw any sharks? Jack joked. And we also went horseback riding. Roger continued. Really? Jack listened inattentively, and Robin gently nudged the boy towards the car. Roger, go ahead and get in. You can tell us on the way. Jack closed the trunk and looked at his friend. Oh, girls, you look so beautiful. And you, Catherine, look absolutely stunning. Should I go away more often so you'll notice? She smiled. Did you enjoy your vacation without your husband? Jack squinted. Catherine just smiled and got into the car without saying anything. At home, as she began unpacking the suitcases, Jack sat down next to her and continued his questioning. So, how was it? Did you like the hotel? Yeah, it was fine. Catherine glanced at her husband briefly and then looked away. The hotel was good. The service was excellent, and there were aquariums everywhere. Hey, Dad, maybe we can buy an aquarium? Roger asked, trying on his new cap. Roger, we'll buy an aquarium, Jack promised. We'll buy one. He wasn't in the mood for a conversation with his son right now, and Catherine could tell by his tone. Was it hot? Jack kept his loving gaze on his wife, but his eyes pierced through her. She forced herself to respond to him calmly and even indifferently. Not really. Roger didn't notice at all. He doesn't care about the weather. Did you go horseback riding? Jack seemed to want to know everything. Yes. Catherine glanced at her husband and then quickly looked away. But her voice sounded confident. Roger went riding every day. Dad, maybe we can go horseback riding. Roger walked back into the room. You know, it's so cool. Roger. Jack nodded slightly, indicating to his son that he wanted to talk to his mother alone. Roger understood and left, not wanting to argue with his father. Catherine took advantage of this moment to catch her breath. The conversation with her husband had turned into torture for her. But Jack didn't seem to notice. He was just surprised by his wife's strange mood. Catherine, what? Why do you keep talking to me about Roger? Roger all the time. I've got it about him. But what about you? Did you relax? Well, yes, quite. Catherine suddenly felt like crying. But she held back and smiled at her husband. Too bad you weren't there. Listen, we bought you a shirt at the market. Robin said it wouldn't suit you, but I think it's your color. Jack gladly accepted the gift. You proved Robin wrong. You're something else. He went out to try it on, and Catherine opened her makeup bag, only to suddenly see a note tucked inside. It was the best week of my life. Alexander. Catherine slowly turned her gaze to her husband, who was buttoning up his shirt and smiling at his reflection in the mirror. Catherine tightly pressed her lips together as she remembered the last day with Alexander at the hotel. She was packing her things and couldn't find her makeup bag when he handed it to her. In his other hand, Alexander held a cluster of large black grapes, silently offering the juicy berries to Catherine. But she just shook her head and sighed. Tomorrow we're flying early in the morning. We need to get ready before Robin and Roger arrive. They won't be here for another couple of hours. Alexander countered. You won't get your guy off the horse, that's for sure. Catherine agreed. He loves it so much. He doesn't want to leave. He left and immediately returned with a bucket containing a bottle of champagne. And you? There were strange tones in his voice. What do you think? For some reason, Catherine didn't like this farewell. She sat on the bed next to him. Another week without you, Alexander said. Oh, come on. Catherine added a touch of carelessness to her voice. You'll still swim, sunbathe, play volleyball. Yeah, he said thoughtfully, then touched her neck. Catherine jumped in surprise. Your pent. Now it's yours. Alexander, when I get home, we'll have two. He silenced her with a kiss, then leaned back on the bed. Catherine buried her face in her hands. She didn't want to say anything more and no longer felt calm and happy. Great shirt, Catherine. Jack pulled her out of her thoughts, and she hurriedly closed her makeup bag, hiding Alexander's note inside. Her husband approached her, sat next to her, and, taking her by the shoulders, thanked her again. Thank you, Catherine. Great gift. At night, Catherine responded warmly to her husband's caresses, and he couldn't help but notice. Well, Catherine, you're something tonight. What? Exhausted, she turned away from him, feeling ashamed in front of Jack, and he hugged her, tenderly kissing her neck. Missed me? Yeah. Lying in the darkness with her eyes open, Catherine listened to her husband's breathing, but her mind was far from him. She remembered the warm night by the sea, the blazing bonfire, and Alexander's passionate embrace. She had never felt so good, and she surrendered to him with all the passion she was capable of. Gentle, tender Jack was not the same now, and as she involuntarily compared the two men, Catherine bit her lip almost to the blood. Why wasn't her husband in bed like Alexander? Why couldn't he give her the same unique sensations? With Jack, everything was simple and clear. But Alexander was like a volcano, an earthquake, a hurricane. It was something that happens only once in a lifetime. And she even felt a little sorry that she wouldn't see him again. Catherine couldn't fall asleep for a long time, and only towards morning did she manage to doze off into an unpleasant, heavy sleep. She didn't hear the phone ringing, and Jack woke up first. "Catherine, is that your phone ringing?" "Yeah," she replied without opening her eyes, getting up to answer the early call, wondering who could possibly need her at this hour. The phone kept ringing, and Jack grumbled disapprovingly. "Are they crazy to call so early?" Still sounding sleepy, Catherine answered the call. "Hello." "Hey." Catherine's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe her ears. Alexander. But no, it couldn't be him. He didn't have her number. "Who's this?" There was alarm in Catherine's voice. "Don't tell me you don't recognize me," Alexander said somewhat teasingly. Of course, it was him. And Catherine, fully awake now, spoke into the receiver, quietly but passionately. "Alexander, are you out of your mind? Do you know what time it is?" She unplugged the phone and hurried to the kitchen. "Why?" Alexander seemed to enjoy teasing her. "How did you get my number?" Catherine tried to figure everything out right away. "Aren't you glad?" Alexander responded to her question with another question. Catherine felt embarrassed. "No, of course, I'm glad. But you're calling in the morning. My husband might." Nervously, she couldn't find the right words. "Do you understand? I just want to see you," Alexander said slowly, emphasizing each word. "Alexander, I'm not feeling great right now. You." Catherine was completely flustered, but Alexander wasn't about to listen to her excuses. "Address," he insisted. "I can't." Catherine composed herself. "Why?" Alexander smirked. Catherine decided to end this pointless conversation and hung up. She did it just in time because Jack entered the kitchen and looked at his wife attentively. "Who called?" "Some wrong number." Catherine blurted out the first thing that came to her mind. "And what's behind the fridge?" Jack smiled. He clearly thought she was hiding something, and Catherine hastened to reassure him. "I just wanted to get some water." She actually poured herself a glass of water and brought it to her lips. "Why are you shaking like that?" Her husband kept at her, and Catherine resorted to the last resort that could halt the dangerous conversation. "Come on, then, you'll warm me up," she said, heading towards the bedroom. Jack watched her thoughtfully but didn't object. A little later, finding herself alone in the bathroom, Catherine stared at her reflection in the mirror for a long time. A heavy premonition gnawed at her heart, and she knew for sure that she could burn in that fire. With difficulty, Catherine forced herself to collect her thoughts and sit down to work. Studying the schema of the stem cell migration algorithm, she translated it and immediately sent it to print. "All done." Jack approached and peeked over her shoulder. "Everything ready?" "Yeah," Catherine nodded. "With the latest changes, everything's translated." He kissed her on the cheek. "God, what would I do without you?" "Ha." Catherine smiled, but her expression darkened upon hearing the ring of the landline phone. Jack picked up the receiver. "Hello. Hello. Speak up." He paused, silent. "Listen, could you bring a couple more sheets? Can you translate them today?" Catherine held her breath. Yeah, sure. "Well, great then. Okay, darling, I'm off." Jack kissed her cheek again. "Bye." Catherine didn't look at her husband, fearing he'd noticed the anxiety in her eyes. "All right, go on." The front door slammed shut, and Catherine felt some relief. But then she remembered. Jack. The printed presentation sheets were still in her hands. He simply forgot to take them with him. Catherine glanced at the phone, as if expecting it to burst into her face with its trill. But it remained silent. She sighed. Eventually, she'd go crazy like this. To distract herself, she went to the kitchen to her son. "Roger, come on, eat. Stop playing with your food." "I'm full." Roger clearly didn't like the porridge and pushed his plate away. Catherine turned to the fridge and read the note attached with a magnet from her husband. "Love you, Dad." She smiled, approached her son, and leaned over him. "He says he's full. But where did you eat then?" "Not a single spoonful." All right. If you don't finish your porridge, forget about playing Counter-Strike and think you can kiss video games goodbye. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Oh, maybe Dad's back. Probably forgot some papers, Catherine said to her son. And the keys? Probably, he replied, smiling. Catherine opened the door and flinched as if she had seen a snake. Standing before her with a bouquet of roses was Alexander. Hi. He confidently drew her to him and kissed her on the lips, but she interrupted his passionate kiss and asked fearfully, Alexander, how did you find me? I missed you, he replied and tried to kiss her again. But she pushed him away, saying, Jack could see you. And from inside the apartment came Roger's voice. Mom, I finished eating. Catherine tried to close the door behind her, but Alexander didn't let her. Alexander, please leave. Roger's home, the woman pleaded. Catherine, I need to talk to you, he said in a tone that brooked no objections. And she agreed, resolving to set everything straight once and for all. Okay, wait for me outside. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, catching her breath. This was the price for her reckless actions. Oh God, how could she have done this? Why couldn't she restrain herself there, at the seaside? And how could she explain to Alexander now that everything that happened between them was a mistake and just a holiday romance that they both should forget? She stepped out into the yard and took a few steps towards Alexander, who was waiting for her. I brought you flowers, he said. My husband could have seen us. Catherine felt like crying out of despair. What's all this about your husband? Alexander unexpectedly became angry. Aren't you glad to see me? I am, she began apologetically. But he interrupted her. And I'm very glad to see you. Very. Alexander emphasized the last word. As acquaintances and neighbors of Catherine passed by, she rubbed her forehead with her hand. Alexander, hello. Catherine, her son's friend, greeted her, hurrying home. Hi, kid. Alexander replied to him, and Catherine could only manage to nod at the boy. Alexander, however, continued to press her. Well, Catherine glanced after the boy and suddenly screamed, jumping in place. Oh, Jack, indeed. Jack's car stopped near the entrance, and he quickly got out and disappeared behind the door. Oh God, Catherine exclaimed nervously. I'm hiding from my own husband. This isn't me. It's madness. Alexander hissed at her. You weren't saying such things the day before yesterday. Catherine looked into his eyes, darkened with anger, and saw everything but love in them. Jack had never looked at her like this. But Alexander, he frightened her, and she involuntarily shrank, as if trying to merge with the wall against which she pressed her back. Back at the seaside, he looked at her differently. But it wasn't real. Alexander was being genuine now. Jack's car drove past, and her husband still didn't notice her. Catherine hurried to get rid of her former lover. Sorry, I can't right now. Roger will be late for school. She quickly spoke, pushing his hand aside and not allowing herself to be hugged. No, we'll talk later. Tonight. Alexander insisted persistently. I can't. Catherine feverishly made up excuses. I have meetings today. Let's do it tomorrow. She didn't know what to do, but then she called Robin and asked to meet her. Her loyal friend didn't refuse, and when she found out what had happened, she said thoughtfully, Catherine, maybe he's really in love. He interrupted his vacation and rushed to you. The friends walked along the crowded street and quietly conversed, as if afraid someone might overhear them. What are you going to do? Robin asked. Robin, if only I knew. Catherine was very nervous and couldn't bring herself to calm down. Yeah. A phone call interrupted her. Oh, sorry. Robin got distracted by a text message, and Catherine looked around. Suddenly, she screamed sharply, grabbing her friend's hand. Alexander was standing on the sidewalk, arrogantly tilting his head and not taking his eyes off her. Oh, Robin, there he is. Who? Robin tore herself away from her phone and squinted. There. Alexander. Look. Over there. Catherine could swear he had just been looking at her. But now he wasn't there anymore. Catherine pressed her hand to her forehead. And Robin looked at her attentively and said doubtfully, "Are you okay, Catherine? Are you seeing things? Are you really in love?" Catherine just shook her head. She really was starting to lose her mind. The huge business center where Catherine was invited as an interpreter opened its doors to her, and she walked out with a foreign delegation, casually chatting with her husband's foreign colleagues on abstract topics. Suddenly, one of them waved his hand, reading the huge inscription someone had left on the marble curb. "Oh, look. This is for you." "Okay." Catherine paled, seeing the blood-red letters on the black marble. "I love you, Catherine." Alexander. The men surrounding her started talking about how romantic it was, and she tried to convince them that she had nothing to do with it. And suddenly, Alexander, coming up behind her, sharply turned her towards him. "Alexander, how did you find me at work?" Catherine was flustered. "Am I worthy of a kiss?" he asked instead of answering, and, pulling her coat off her shoulders, began covering her face and neck with passionate kisses. "What are you doing?" Catherine pleaded, trying to break free from his embrace, but he only held her tighter. And instead of helping her, the foreigners began cheering Alexander on. "Come on. Oh yeah. Take now." Breaking free, Catherine turned her head and saw her husband standing on the steps, silently watching the scene. "Jack!" Catherine exclaimed and woke up. "What?" Jack was sitting next to her in bed. He was wearing glasses and reading something. What? A bad dream." He held her with his free hand, and Catherine hugged him tightly, realizing that it was all just a dream. "Yeah." She nodded and hugged her husband even tighter. He took off his glasses, set aside the laptop, and kissed his wife. And Catherine wanted to cry again. There it was, the difference between Jack and Alexander. Her husband always provided her with peace and protection, while Alexander only filled her soul with fear and anxiety. And then she made the final decision to break up with him. To tell him to leave her alone because she would never be with him. Never. Catherine didn't delay it. And in the morning, she dialed Alexander's number herself. An hour later, she got into his car, showing with her entire demeanor that she was ready for a serious conversation. Dodging the formal lover's welcome kiss, Catherine looked him sternly in the eyes. "We shouldn't see each other anymore. Alexander, I don't want to change my life. I have a family, a child. Yes, things aren't always smooth with us, but I can't deceive them." "You can't," Alexander said slowly. Catherine bit her lip. It took her a few seconds to find the right words. "We had good times together, but everything passes. What was. Let's leave it as just a memory. Just a memory." Alexander wasn't very talkative this time, and Catherine thought she had managed to convince him. She decided to confess. "I love Jack. I don't want to cheat on him." "Are you sure?" Alexander looked away, then turned his gaze back to her. She nodded and handed him his locket. "By the way, gifts aren't returned." Alexander smirked and started the car. "Shall we go for a ride?" She hadn't had time to get out and already regretted it because the car was picking up speed rapidly, obeying its owner. Catherine had always been afraid of fast driving and instantly panicked. "Where are we going?" "Alexander, where are we going?" "Listen, I understand you're upset with me and think I'm wrong. But understand, it's better for both of us this way. Alexander, don't speed. Please." "Alexander, what are you doing? Slow down." "Alexander, can't you hear me?" She tried to grab the wheel, but Alexander yelled wildly at her. "Take your hand off." "I'm scared." Catherine screamed. "Scared?" Alexander stopped holding back and showed his true face of an undisguised psychopath. "You're scared. And here I thought you were a good girl. Pure, bright girl. Turns out, you're just a lying piece of trash. This is who you are." What do you think? You used a guy and left him. No, darling. Now I'll decide who you love, who you leave. Understand? Understood? And you want to play? Let's play. So you get really scared. You'll be really scared now. Squealing tires, the car raced through the city at full speed. Alexander cut off other cars, swerved from lane to lane, and kept pressing on the gas, burying the pedal to the floor. Isn't this car great? Awesome, huh? Look, let's go. Catherine couldn't take it anymore. Alexander, stop. But he didn't hear her and, turning to her, shouted right in her face. Like it, Alexander, I'm begging you. Catherine felt like she was about to have a breakdown. But unexpectedly, Alexander made a loop on some square and actually stopped. Well, did you like it? Did you? He reached out to her and started nervously hugging her, pulling her close. Come on. Remember how good it was for us. Come on. I want a kiss. He muttered feverishly. Let me go. Catherine pushed him away, but he still pressed his lips against hers. Kiss me. Kiss me. She bit him, and he let go of her, grabbing his lip. Ah, you witch. Witch. But Catherine had already jumped out of the car and, running away, let out all her fear in one scream. Psychopath. Sobbing as she fled. Witch. Alexander muttered, examining the bitten spot in the mirror. Then he laughed and dialed someone's number. The golden locket he had given Catherine lay on the floor, and he picked it up, squeezing it tightly in. Meanwhile, Jack, wearing his usual white lab coat, strode down the corridor, talking on the phone and hurriedly responding to greetings and questions from colleagues. Hello. Yes. Yes. I'm already at the institute. I'll be there soon. Hello, Jack. Yes. Denise, the secretary, caught up with him on the stairs and got straight to the point. The boss called. Are you going to the inter-industry seminars? Not right now. He waved her off. But a young graduate student approached him. Jack, you promised to review my designs. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Send an email. Not now. Come on. Come on. Is everyone here? Jack quickly ascended the stairs, with Denise struggling to keep up. Just you. And Carl, as always, is running late, Denise reported. No surprises there. Jack remarked calmly. All right. Understood. With determined steps, he entered the conference room, quickly leaned over, and instead of a greeting, kissed Robin on the cheek. Then he looked at everyone present. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Hello, colleagues. Hey. So, how's everyone feeling? Ready for action? Jack took off his coat and sat down at his place. Justin, doing fine, he replied languidly. Just want to sleep. How are things with us? Anna, how are the documents? Everything in order? Well, I won't ask about the rats or the computers. I'm confident in them. My colleagues, we've done good work. We're ready. I believe we'll win. I won't talk about how important this is for us. And actually, for the people we're doing all this for. An alert about a message on his phone interrupted Jack's speech, and he fell silent for a few seconds. Robin cast him a knowing and sympathetic glance. She knew Jack too well not to understand that his thoughts were far away. Nevertheless, he managed to compose himself and continue. Anyway, I wanted to say that the grant means further funding for our project. And that means we'll be working together, moving from rats to humans. Justin joked. Exactly, Justin. Exactly. We'll work as one team, all together. It's crucial. I want to introduce you to Robin. Not only is she a representative of the ministry, but also the driving force behind the foundation organizing this presentation. Several more messages, arriving one after another, finally threw Jack off track, and he lost his train of thought. Robin. So, Robin, thank you for your support. She realized Jack needed some time to compose himself and started speaking herself. The presentation will take place in 2 days in the conference hall of your institute. You'll be presenting on the second day. In the brochures you printed, there's a mistake on page 56. Justin pointed out, to Jack's surprise. Robin reacted rather sharply to her deputy's remark. I didn't print them. That's one. Before handing you the brochures, I carefully checked everything. That's two. So, there can't be any mistake. That's three. I never make mistakes. I was mistaken. Justin backed off from the conflict. Justin. Jack gently rebuked him. Robin took advantage of a brief pause and spoke again. I'll continue. On the second day, the real contenders are shown. You'll be closing with your project. That's the most advantageous position. It's important that everything goes smoothly. The presentation will be in keynote format. From the iWork package for Macintosh. Wait a minute. Where did Macintosh come from? Carl, responsible for the project's technical support, became concerned. I'm hearing about this for the first time. My presentations were done in PowerPoint on PS. No one mentioned Macintosh. When did this become known? Denise, I sent you an email. Robin protested. Don't you check your email? Denise, do you read your email? Jack looked at his secretary. The girl was flustered. Jack, oops. Jack, Carl persisted quietly. This is a very serious problem because we have less than a day left. And during this time, we need to redo the entire presentation from one format to another. Can't you just switch from PAL to CCAM? Jack joked. No, you can't. Because I need to convert all the videos to QuickTime. Reformat all the tables manually. I can translate the texts in 5 minutes, but not the entire presentation. I have to manually reformat everything. To reformat 50 pages of text manually overnight. It's not like giving rats injections in the heart. Carl, are you kidding me? I've made 3,549 injections into the heart. Directly into the heart. And never missed. Have you seen a rat's heart? It's smaller than a matchstick head. What's the point of all this now? We could really mess up the presentation. Where on earth am I going to get a Macintosh tonight? All right. Jack took control of the situation decisively. My friends, let's calm down now. I think we can find a solution to this issue. So, we'll transfer everything to Google Documents on the internet, which will format everything automatically. What about security? Carl asked. We'll share everything an hour before the presentation. Jack replied calmly. That's an idea. Carl sighed with relief, knowing full well the amount of work he had just avoided. Everyone, is it settled? Jack asked. Well, that's wonderful. The group chatted and left the room, leaving Jack alone with Robin. You have a good team, she said to him. Yes, he confirmed. I have the team I need. Robin scrutinized his face. Jack, what's wrong with you? With me? Oh, don't mind me. He deflected. What do we have left? Robin shrugged. You need to hand me 2 copies of the project documentation. In Spanish and English. Yeah. Jack stood up, grabbed 2 folders from the shelf, and placed them in front of Robin. Then he sat down next to her. She opened the documents. You signed all the pages. Jack started to recall if he had done so. Robin glanced at him again. Jack, this is very important. Each page needs to be signed by you. Oh, right. He pulled the folder towards him and began to hastily sign the missed pages. Did you sign everything here? Robin pointed to the second folder. Yeah. He nodded. She couldn't take her worried gaze off him. Jack, what's wrong? Everything's fine, he replied, still not lifting his eyes from the papers. I've known you for ages. Come on, spill it. Jack, her voice conveyed not only persistence but also concern. He silently picked up his phone, opened the latest message, and handed it to her. She read the SMS, your wife is cheating on you, and furrowed her brow slightly. When did this come? 5 minutes ago. Jack carefully continued to sign the pages. From whom? Robin continued to question him. I don't know. From an unknown number. He still didn't look away from the papers. Listen, don't dwell on it. Robin added firmness to her voice. Maybe it's not even meant for you. Maybe it's not for me. Jack agreed. Seriously, don't dwell on it. Maybe they just got the wrong number. Robin felt she had to defend her friend. Right. Jack closed the folder and put the pen aside. Seems like that's it. It's just the 8th message in 2 days. The 8th. Robin was surprised. Yeah. Jack clearly didn't want to talk about it. And she fell silent too. They just looked at each other for a while. Then Jack got up and headed for the door. Robin had no choice but to follow him. As they were leaving the institute, Jack called out to Harold. Jack, I got it all figured out. Carl explained to me how to do everything through the internet. Good job, colleague. Jack nodded at him and let Robin go ahead at the entrance. On the steps, she stopped and turned to him. This is funny, Jack. Why do you pay attention to such things? They're just trying to throw you off track. I'm not paying attention to anything anymore. Jack shivered as if he was cold. I'm thinking about something else now. With this work, I completely forgot about Catherine. How's everything with me? We'll win the grant, then. Well, you're right. Robin supported him. When you win the grant, then what? We'll go on vacation. Jack said dreamily. I promised Catherine a long time ago that we'd go somewhere to relax. And Roger, I promised him to go horseback riding. He loves horses. But I keep promising. All you men are the same. Robin smiled. Just making promises. Oh, Robin. Jack hugged her like a friend. You know me so well. How much I love you. The smile faded from Robin's lips, and a long-forgotten pain flashed in her eyes. You should have said that 10 years ago. Those words embarrassed them both, and Robin, to avoid digging up the past further, tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. Jack, why don't you invite Catherine to the restaurant tonight? The one where you celebrated your anniversary. It's very beautiful there. She'll appreciate it. And delete that message. Forget about it altogether. I've already forgotten about it, Jack said with feigned cheerfulness. And the restaurant is a good idea. I've never given you bad advice. Robin was glad that their formeries had returned to their relationship. That's true. You've never given me bad advice, Jack said without taking his hands out of his pockets. And suddenly Robin wished he would hug her now. At least like he did 5 minutes ago. But she carefully extinguished the flame that had ignited in her eyes, and they darkened again. Everything will be okay. She promised him goodbye. You'll see. Neither Robin nor Jack noticed Justin, who was watching them attentively from behind the wheel of his car. He averted his gaze to avoid attracting their attention. He already knew what he would do next. As soon as Robin parted ways with Jack, she dialed Catherine's number. Catherine, at that moment, was standing near the school, waiting for Roger's classes to end. So, she was pleased when Robin called. Hello. But Robin didn't plan to just chat with her. She got straight to the point. Hi, friend. Have you told anyone about Alexander? No, of course not. Why? Catherine was surprised. What? Robin was annoyed by her friend's lack of insight. An anonymous message came to your husband saying, your wife is cheating on you. Can you hear me, Catherine? So, someone knows, Catherine said. I can't even imagine. Confusion tinged Robin's voice. Then she hurried. Maybe it's a coincidence. Catherine, I can't talk right now, but I'll definitely call you back. There were short beeps on the other end of the line, and Catherine ended the call, only for someone to press the cold muzzle of a gun against her head the next second. Catherine sharply turned around and saw her son's smiling face through the metal bars of the school fence. Roger, are you out of your mind? You scared me, she exclaimed. Where did you get that? It's a toy, Mom. Roger didn't expect such a reaction from his mother and headed towards the exit. She walked alongside him. I see it's a toy. Catherine regained her composure. Whose is it? Mine. Uncle Alexander gave it to me, her son informed her. Which Uncle Alexander? Catherine asked, alarmed. Well, the one. The boy began to explain but faltered. All right, Catherine said sternly, and took the toy gun from him. I've told you countless times. Don't talk to strangers, and especially don't take toys from them. Why is he a stranger? Roger was clearly unhappy with his mother's decision. Why? Why? Catherine started, but then her phone rang. Without looking at the screen, she answered the call. Hello, hi. A smooth voice came from the receiver. Then, a second later, in a tone that brooked no objections, he demanded, "Give the gun back to the child." Catherine began to feverishly look around, but Alexander was nowhere to be found. Mom, what's wrong? Roger asked, confused. She didn't reply to him and hurried to take her son home. She no longer felt safe. However, when Jack invited her to a restaurant in the evening, she agreed to go with him. She really wanted to relax, spend time alone with her husband, feel his calm, tender love, and reciprocate it. Jack was also glad. They hadn't gone out together for many years, and perhaps now it was particularly necessary for them. Jack took charge of choosing the menu and said to the waiter leaning over him, "Well, all this is very interesting, but we'll have the wild Atlantic sea bass baked in salt anyway. Right?" He clarified with Catherine. Yes. She nodded and smiled at her husband. She hadn't felt this good in a long time. A wonderful choice. The waiter agreed. Do you recommend it? Catherine looked up at him. Of course. The waiter took the order and was about to leave, but Jack stopped him. Yes, yes, yes. Just a moment. He then returned. Yes, of course. And red wine. I'll invite the sommelier for you. The waiter nodded. And are we celebrating already? Jack asked Catherine, hinting at the grant. We're anticipating. He replied, and we're not afraid of jinxing it. Catherine joked. We're not. Jack confirmed. Then he suddenly became serious. Catherine, something happened today. She instantly knew what her husband was about to talk about and hurriedly covered his hand with hers. Jack, I know. I wanted to tell you myself, to explain everything, but he didn't let her finish and took the lead in the conversation again. Wait, I've wanted to tell you this for a long time. Basically, I want you to know. Of course, my work is very important for all of us, for me. But most importantly, I do all this for us, for our family, for you, for Roger. I understand. Catherine hastily nodded. She saw how nervous her husband was, and she hated herself for it. And he continued to speak in a stuttering and bewildered manner. Forgive me for being with you so little. It's just, Jack, I understand everything. Catherine decided to have an open conversation and couldn't stop now. Did you want to tell me something? What happened today? Jack wanted to talk about the messages, about how he was to blame for everything, and about how he believed her. So he started with a confession. Catherine, I love you very much. The young man who approached their table didn't let him finish. Excuse me, my name is Bob. I'm the restaurant sommelier. Let me recommend or suggest something to you. We can go to the wine cabinet and choose the best wine for tonight. Let's go. Catherine felt like her husband was even relieved that their unpleasant conversation had been interrupted, if only briefly. She watched them leave, tears welling up in her eyes. Why was it so hard for her to admit what had happened when Jack was her closest person? He should understand her, understand and forgive. Meanwhile, Jack listened attentively to the sommelier, who led him to the wine cabinet. Please, we have a huge selection, the best wines. What would you like? White, red, champagne. I'd like some red, something very tasty. We have Italy, the New World. Here. The sommelier already understood the guest's choice, but at that moment a man unknown to both of them walked past them and glanced at the bottle of wine Jack wanted. I highly recommend it, he said significantly. Really? Jack was surprised. He didn't notice Catherine looking at the man with undisguised horror, and turned back to the cabinet. "What you've just been recommended," the sommelier intercepted his attention again, "is undoubtedly the gem of our collection." Meanwhile, Alexander approached the table where Catherine was sitting and placed a small envelope in front of her. "Take a look," he said to her unexpectedly calmly. "It's very interesting." Then he left, and she, trembling hands, opened the envelope and unfolded the sheet of paper. It was the same algorithm for stem cell migration from the presentation her husband had been working on. Catherine jumped up as if stung and, grabbing the envelope, rushed after Alexander. She ran out of the restaurant and dashed towards his departing car. "Stop! Stop! Damn it!" she yelled. But he didn't even think of stopping. So Catherine started hitchhiking. And when the driver of the first taxi she managed to flag down slowed down, she quickly got into the back seat and demanded, "Faster! Faster! Follow that red car! Hurry! I'll pay!" I like the beginning already. The driver clearly didn't take her seriously. "Who are we chasing? Come on! Come on! Come on! Hurry! Please!" Catherine urged him. "Come on! Come on!" At the same time, she tried to call Alexander. "Come on! Pick up the phone! Damn it!" Meanwhile, Jack returned to the table and was surprised to find Catherine gone. He assumed she had gone to the restroom and had no idea that at that moment his wife was racing through the city, urging an inattentive taxi driver, "After him! After him! After him! Come on! Come on!" The waiter placed a huge tray in front of Jack. "Here you go. Your dish." Jack nodded and dialed his wife's number. He couldn't understand what was happening and why she wasn't answering his calls. Meanwhile, Catherine, caught up in the chase, only had Alexander's car in her sights. "Come on, let's go after him," she shouted to the taxi driver, noticing Alexander running a red light. "Sorry, miss," the driver insisted stubbornly. "That might work well in the movies, but here we lose our license for that. Damn it." The woman cursed, unable to contain her emotions. "Hey, green light," the driver exclaimed cheerfully. But she, knowing how Alexander drove, just waved her hand dismissively. "Let's go back to the restaurant." When she entered the dining area, Jack was no longer there. Catherine approached the sommelier. "Young man." "Yes," he responded. "The man." She pointed to her table. "Your companion has already left," the sommelier said, sounding oddly apologetic. Catherine pressed her hand to her forehead. She had ruined everything again. And the worst part was that now Jack knew everything. Catherine took out her phone and saw 5 missed calls from him. She tried calling him herself, but he didn't answer. Slowly, she left the restaurant and headed home, to the place where she had been so happy just a short while ago, but for some reason hadn't appreciated her happiness. Meanwhile, Jack had returned home and was pacing around the dark apartment like a trapped animal. The phone vibrated, and his wife's portrait lit up the screen. Jack declined the call. No, not over the phone. He wanted her to tell him everything to his face. God, he couldn't even imagine that all this was happening to him. To him and his wife, the woman who not long ago belonged only to him. Or maybe she had always been deceiving him. Where was she now? And when would she come back? Why did she leave just like that, making him look like a fool? Jack felt rage engulfing him. And at that moment, there was a short ring at the door. Jack opened it and turned away, unwilling to look at Catherine. Let her explain everything first. But it wasn't her. It was a flower delivery guy. "Sorry," the guy said. "Flowers for Catherine." "From whom?" "It's all written in the note. Goodbye." Jack picked up the bouquet of roses brought for his wife and extracted the note. In beautiful handwriting, it read, "To beloved Catherine with tenderness, Alexander." Jack closed his eyes and clenched his teeth tightly, feeling the pain and resentment fill his entire body. So, it was true. And those text messages weren't just someone's prank. He filled a vase with water and placed the bouquet in it. Then he put the note back in its place. His wife should see it as soon as she returned. The phone kept ringing and ringing. It was Catherine, but he didn't answer. Not wanting to unleash his boiling rage prematurely, he quietly walked into the bedroom and sank heavily onto the bed. Burying his burning head in his hands, Catherine opened the door with her key and entered the apartment. Jack was right. The first thing she saw was the bouquet and the note peeking out from the roses. Jack slowly approached her and stood behind her. "This is for you," he said in a cold tone. "Jack." Catherine turned to her husband, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I should have told you right away, you scoundrel," Jack said, indicating he wouldn't listen, and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Roger peeked out from his room. He heard everything but didn't dare approach his mother. The boy just stood in the darkness and watched her, while she couldn't take her eyes off the hated bouquet, but hated herself even more for tearing her family apart. She reached out, took her phone, and dialed her only friend's number. Catherine really wanted Robin to be there with her now, and she knew she wouldn't refuse. While Robin was on her way to her house, Catherine turned on the shower and stood under its gentle streams for a long time, as if they could wash away all the pain from her torn-apart soul. Robin arrived quickly and, as always, practical and businesslike. Rolled up the printed sheet with the diagram that Alexander had left for Catherine in the restaurant, and tucked it into the jewelry box with her trinkets and valuables. "What are you doing?" Catherine didn't understand. "Guys usually don't look here," Robin explained. "We need to hide them." "Why?" Catherine still didn't understand. "Because it's evidence against Alexander," Robin confidently stated. "Intellectual property theft. The main thing is for Jack not to see it." "I never hide anything from my husband." Catherine turned away. "Oh, Catherine, you're like a child," Robin scolded her. "Oh, Robin," Catherine sobbed. "What if he doesn't come back?" "Oh, calm down." Robin shook her head. "He'll be back. Tomorrow, or rather today, is the first day of the presentation. We'll see each other. I'll talk to him. If his work suffers because of me, I'll never forgive myself." Tears streamed down Catherine's cheeks. "Well, you know, I won't forgive myself either," Robin declared. "You?" Catherine was surprised. "Who didn't keep an eye on you at the resort?" Her friend's words sounded very harsh, and Catherine burst into tears. "Oh, Catherine," Robin said softly. "Robin, it's my fault. If only I had known." Catherine continued to cry. "I'm not perfect either. I should have stopped you. I just wanted you to relax." She reached out and stroked her friend's hair. "Are you hurting?" she asked. "It's just making me feel better." Catherine waved it off. Robin pressed her hand to her lips. Her fingers trembled, and she couldn't control their shaking. "Who is this Alexander anyway?" she asked. "Maybe he's undermining Jack. Or does he need you?" "I don't know." Catherine shook her head. "I don't know either," Robin said in a strange voice, but then she pulled herself together. "Okay, enough of that. It's time to sleep. What's important for us? That Jack presents calmly and normally tomorrow, right?" She uncorked a bottle of wine and poured herself and Catherine a glass. "Yes," Catherine confirmed. She wasn't used to arguing with Robin at all. "What do you have tomorrow?" she asked, handing her a glass. "I have a meeting at 12, Catherine said. "So, negotiate. Don't think about anything. Let's drink," Robin said cheerfully. "Robin, what would I do without you?" Catherine was sincerely grateful to her friend for the support. "Everything will be fine, Catherine. You'll see." Robin smiled at her, and a smile flickered on Catherine's lips too. She always trusted her and was sure that Robin would never let her down. Catherine sighed. She just wanted everything to be okay with Jack. Meanwhile, he, not feeling the night chill, smoked one cigarette after another, watching as the city lit up with lights and winked at him with indifferent eyes of red and yellow car lights. At that moment, nothing mattered to him. The cold, the loneliness, tomorrow's presentation, work. All of this was secondary, insignificant. The main thing now was the pain pulsating inside him. It hindered him not only from thinking, but also from breathing. Perhaps that's why in the morning, when he listened to someone else's presentation and recognized his work in every word of the speaker, he remained silent and only frowned more and more. And from the platform came a confident speech. In order for the rescue team to start saving human lives, it needs to be brought to the scene of the accident. Similarly, it is necessary to show the direction of movement of stem cells so that they rush to repair the damaged heart. Based on our clinic, 2 key discoveries were made. First, the fact that the heart tries to restore itself after a heart attack by releasing the SDF1 molecule, the so-called attractor. "Jack, that's your work." Harold's voice sounded indignant. Within a few days after the attack, the speaker continued without paying attention to it. The second, the fact that the release of the SDF1 molecule acts as a beacon for peripheral stem cells, calling them for repair work. Jack's team began to rise from their seats, hurrying to their leader. "Jack, why are you sitting there?" "Jack can't understand." "Why?" His outraged colleagues buzzed. "It's your work, Jack." "Jonathan, he works so hard on it." Jack, not knowing why, approached the speaker. He didn't intend to make a scene, shout, or prove anything. He just wanted to look this person in the eye. The speaker fell silent, took off his glasses upon seeing Jack, and smirked blatantly, staring him straight in the eyes. Around them, a whole sea of disgruntled voices buzzed. "This is your work. Why? Where did he even come from?" The whole department worked on it. "Guys, what's going on? This is pure scientific plagiarism." "What's happening, gentlemen? What's happening is completely incomprehensible." Jack turned around and headed for the exit. His team rushed after him. "Jack, please, tell us. Jack, let's. Jack, who is he anyway?" The whole department worked. At that moment, Catherine was in a meeting and knew nothing. But the crushing pain in her heart prevented her from calmly performing her work. Involuntarily, she thought about her husband and snapped back to reality only when she heard the director's words. "Catherine, we are waiting." "Ha. Oh, yes," she realized. "I'm sorry." Catherine listened to the speech of the foreign guest and began to translate his words. "So, we are ready to place an order for your new equipment on one condition." Suddenly, she interrupted herself mid-sentence and turned to the director. "Craig, do you have an in-house translator in the company?" "Yes." He didn't understand why she was asking him this. "Could you please summon him?" Catherine asked. "Why?" The director was clearly surprised by such a request. "We always work with you on such negotiations. I'm feeling unwell, and I'm afraid I won't be able to finish the negotiations." She stood up from her seat. "Catherine, you can't leave now." The director muttered through his teeth and smiled at the foreign colleagues with a guilty smile. "Catherine, you have a contract." She approached him and leaned in. "I don't care about your contract. My family is falling apart." She worked out, and the foreigners, understanding nothing, exchanged glances. "Just a moment." The director hurried to reassure them. "Water at the institute." Jack's team couldn't decide what to do next. "Calm down and figure out the situation," Carl said. "But Fred, how dare he do this at all?" "What do you mean dare?" Carl waved his hand. "Legally, everything is clean. The research direction seems fine too, but the development seems stolen." "Guys, hang in there. We are with you." Someone who knew about Jack's projects passed by the group. "The details are different. Can't catch him." Carl continued. "Yeah, seems like the same project, but also different." Secretary Denise remarked. Harold paced the foyer silently, listening to the group. "Did you see how important Fred looked when he presented the project? Someone leaked information. If Jack allows." "What permission are you talking about now?" Harold intervened in the conversation. He wanted to say more, but at that moment, a young man in a strict business suit approached them and said sarcastically, "Guys, I sympathize with you, but you need to make sure there's no leakage." He received no response and left. But the colleagues couldn't continue their conversation because Catherine burst into their midst. "Hello." She hurriedly greeted everyone, then asked, "Excuse me, where's Jack?" "Catherine, we're looking for him ourselves," Denise informed her, distressed. "You see, when this happened, he just got up and left the room. Just got up and left." "When all this happened, what happened?" Catherine asked with a trembling voice. "Catherine, our project." Catherine understood everything. She didn't need lengthy explanations. She turned around and ran out of the institute. Jack's colleagues watched her go and suddenly noticed the one who stole their project. "Fred," Carl said. They took a few steps towards him, and he, casually leading his team, approached them and mockingly said, "Got a lighter?" His audacity knew no bounds, and Jack's colleagues couldn't come up with an answer. They simply didn't know how to break through this wall of insolence and cynicism. Meanwhile, Jack sat in his office and clearly didn't want to see anyone. This was where Robin found him. "Jack, are you here? Everyone's looking for you." "Interesting. Why?" He smirked in response. "What do you mean why?" "You just," Robin began, but he interrupted her. "I just lost my project." "Yeah, it was presented by another group. Completely. And what of it?" "Jack, I understand you're in shock." Robin tried to find the right words, but this time it didn't work. "No, you don't understand." Jack was unusually persistent today. "Jack, I know what this project meant to you, but life doesn't end here." Robin added steel to her voice. "We'll figure something out." "No, you don't understand," he repeated and stood up from his chair. "What does the project have to do with anything?" "What?" Robin suddenly thought that she indeed stopped understanding him, and Jack approached the scheme drawn on a large sheet of paper and started peeling off the stickers attached to it. "You know," he said, his back to Robin, "I was sitting in the hall, looking at Fred, at that scum, who with the most innocent face presented my ideas, drew my schemes. There was only one thought in my head." He suddenly tore off the sheet and, crumpling it, threw it on the floor. Then he asked fiercely, "What did she want?" "Ha, Jack, stop." Robin was bewildered. She had never seen Jack like this. "Are you thinking about Catherine right now?" "Yes," he nodded. "And you're talking about the project." "I need to go home." He left the office, and Robin hurried after him. But neither she nor Jack saw Catherine, who was already rushing down the institute steps. Not knowing where to find Jack, she was only thinking about her husband, and when her phone rang, she hurriedly pulled it out of her pocket. But the screen displayed the number of someone she hated with all her heart. Thinking quickly, Catherine answered the call and heard Alexander's insidious voice. "Hello, darling, you jerk." She spoke, unable to contain her anger. "Is this you? Did you set up Jack? I'm asking you. If it's you, I'll find a way to make you pay. Do you hear me?" Oh, if he were caught by her now, she would tear him apart with her own hands. But he wasn't there, and Catherine had nothing left but to threaten him. And as if he hadn't heard what she had just said, he mockingly remarked, "You know, your son plays basketball wonderfully on the school court." Catherine involuntarily lowered the hand holding the phone. Oh God, that scoundrel had reached her son. He knew all her weak spots perfectly well and ruthlessly pressed on them. And Roger was indeed enthusiastically playing basketball with the other kids when he noticed Alexander approaching them on his motorcycle. "Roger," Alexander called out to him. The boy immediately went over to his old acquaintance, enjoying the whispers of his friends. "Awesome. Lucky you. I wish I had one like that. Here, take this." Alexander tossed the boy a helmet. "Wanna go for a ride?" Roger grinned widely. "Hello, Uncle Alexander. Cool motorcycle." Alexander winked at him. The motorcycle engine roared, and the envious boys barely noticed as he disappeared into the stream of passing cars. Jack knew nothing about this. He was already at home, sternly looking at Robin, who had come with him. "Listen, Why didn't you tell me everything right away? He glanced briefly at their wedding photo with Catherine, and then dropped it abruptly, not wanting to see those happy faces anymore. Robin tightened her grip on her fingers. Jack, she's my friend, and what about me? Jack came close to her, but then turned away and started pacing the room again. Robin followed him. Well, I didn't think it was that serious between them. Just a holiday romance. I didn't know she was with him here, so she certainly didn't tell you anything. Jack crossed his arms over his chest. No, she just said she written his pennant. Robin said, sounding flustered. Pennant. Jack didn't understand. What pennant? Well, the one she came with. Robin explained. His gift. So, she returned it. Jack smirked. She returned it and said there would be nothing more between them. Robin hastened to reassure him. Jack nervously grabbed Catherine's jewelry box and began shaking it. Then he showed Robin the gold chain. It's him. She nodded, and Jack had already spotted the folded note, the same one that Robin had hidden here last night. He hurriedly unfolded it and saw the diagram from his presentation. Now Jack understood everything. It was her, Catherine, his one and only beloved wife, who had betrayed him. She not only cheated on him, but also passed on the developments he had worked on for so long to someone else. How could he have been so wrong about her? Why didn't he realize everything earlier? And what would she say when he asked her about it? Did she simply forget all the good times they had? Yes, Catherine forgot. At that moment, she didn't remember Jack or his project. Her only concern was Roger. Gasping for breath, she burst into the schoolyard and immediately ran into her son's friends who were heading for the exit. Guys, have you seen Roger? Where's Roger? She asked urgently. He rode off on a motorcycle somewhere. They readily explained, on a motorcycle. Catherine was taken aback, and to cope with her emotions somehow, she added quietly, okay. Her head was spinning. But Roger was very pleased that he had managed to ride such a cool motorcycle. Alexander noticed this. Well, did you like it? He asked the boy. Yeah, it's awesome. Roger took the driver's seat while Alexander stepped aside to make a call. He dialed Catherine's number. She answered right away. Hello, hey, darling. This time Alexander didn't bother to sound affectionate. But Catherine wasn't paying attention to his tone. Her eyes darkened with anger as she spoke. Where's my son? If anything happens to him, I don't know what I'll do to you. I'll put you in jail. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Alexander wasn't interested in wasting time on her emotions, so he simply hung up the phone. And when she fell silent to catch her breath, he asked calmly, Finished? What? Catherine exclaimed. Write down the address. Alexander instructed her sharply. What? Catherine didn't understand. Write down the address. Alexander raised his voice at her. He dictated the address, disconnected the call, pocketed his phone, sat behind the wheel, and revved the motorcycle, making Roger's heart skip with excitement. Catherine's heart was also racing, but only with fear. She hailed a taxi and immediately began urging the driver. Can you go faster? Yes, I can. I can. He calmly replied. And even faster, can you? Catherine was afraid she would start to panic any moment now. I can go faster. The taxi driver didn't argue with her, sensing that something terrible had happened to his passenger. When they arrived, Catherine jumped out of the car, barely managing to hand him the money. Thank you. Keep the change. And within a minute, she pounced on Alexander, who came out to meet her on the porch. Where is my child? She lunged at him like an enraged tigress and began slapping his cheeks. Where is my child? I'm asking you. Where is my child? Calm down. He struggled to grab her hands and shouted, He's in the house. Where in the house? From his voice, Catherine instantly understood that nothing had happened to her son. There, in the house. Alexander waved his hand. Roger was watching TV, sitting on a large white couch, and when his mother rushed to him, fell to her knees, started feeling him and looking into his face. He was very surprised. "Roger, my boy, are you okay?" Catherine asked him anxiously. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" He didn't understand. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Her worry made her ignore his words. "No, Mom. Mom." The boy tried to reach her consciousness. "Did he hurt you?" Catherine continued to ask. "Mom, what are you talking about?" He pushed her hands away. "We were watching cartoons." "Oh, my God." Catherine buried her face in her hands. But then anger overwhelmed her again, and she spoke with her previous fury, addressing Alexander, who stood in the doorway. "You despicable creature." "Mom." Roger wanted to reason with her, but she didn't hear her son anymore and only saw Alexander standing there. "Who are you? What do you think you are? You freak." "Roger, we're going home." Alexander threw her bag, which she dropped in the hallway, at her feet and said calmly, "No one is going anywhere." "What?" Catherine grabbed Roger's hand and ran to the door, but it had already slammed shut in front of them. "Mom. Mom." The boy didn't understand anything anymore. "Stop." Catherine shouted at Alexander. Roger also called out to him. "Uncle Alexander, stop." Catherine began pounding on the door with her fists. "Open up." "What's happening, Mom?" Roger asked, but instead of answering, she kicked the solid metal door several times. "Open it," I said. No one responded, and Catherine pressed her hand to her burning forehead again. She didn't know what would happen to them now, and what else this psychopath, who first lured them with Roger and now locked them in his house, had planned. And Jack, he doesn't know anything about this. Catherine didn't even realize that her husband blamed her not only for infidelity, but she also didn't know that at that moment he wasn't alone, but with Robin, her only friend, whom she loved like a sister. Robin led Jack into her home and waved her hand, inviting him to come in. "Come in. I'll pour you a drink to calm down. It's good we came here, right?" "Yeah, good," Jack mechanically replied, no longer knowing what was good and what was bad. He sat on the couch, but then jumped up from it. "You know, Robin, I just can't understand. What did she want?" "Jack," Robin said next to him, "don't try to find logic in this. You just misjudged the person." "What?" He didn't understand. Maybe she didn't have any other choice. Robin looked him in the eyes. "I don't get it. Are you defending her?" "No, I'm not defending her. But you understand that love." Jack interrupted her. "So, you mean she loves him, right?" "Listen, what are you saying?" "Huh? What are you saying?" He paced around the room again. "So, she loves him now, and that means she doesn't love me. She doesn't love you." Robin slammed her hand on the table. "And she never loved you. Do you remember when I came from Canada? How surprised I was that you were together." Jack sat back on the couch, and she sat next to him. "She never understood you. Never. And anyway, I was against your wedding, against the wedding. Why didn't you say anything before?" It burst out of Jack. "How?" Robin's voice trembled traitorously, and she continued softly and affectionately. "Jack, how could I say? After what we had." But Jack didn't realize that he touched the most secret strings of her soul and just waved it off. What does it matter now? Robin wanted to tell him that unlike him, she remembers everything and never forgot that she was the one who should be with him, because she would never betray him like Catherine did. But the words froze on her trembling lips, and she couldn't cope with the overwhelming emotion that engulfed her. The ringing phone brought her back to reality. She hurriedly answered the call. "Yes." Then she added, "Okay," and turned to Jack. "Sorry, I need to leave for an hour, maybe 2. "Okay." He nodded. He didn't care about her anyway. He thought about Catherine again. Where is she? And why didn't she even call to gloat over him? Catherine tried to call her husband several times, but the phone signal was jammed, and without antennas, the gadget turned into a worthless, useless thing. She tossed it into her bag and looked at her son. "Mom, Why did he lock us in the room? Roger asked her. Don't worry, honey. He'll let us out soon. Catherine suddenly felt a surge of determination. Mom, is Uncle Alexander a bad person? The boy persisted. Seems like it. She shrugged. Then she approached the small window, but it was positioned in such a way that she couldn't see anything. Roger followed her closely. Mom, I'm sorry I went with him. I thought he was good. Catherine sat down next to him and hugged him. It's okay. You forgive me too, she said to her son. And she thought about Jack again. Only he could help them. Only he. But he wasn't there with them. He was with Robin, who, leaving him alone, entered her dressing room and turned on the red light there. What does it matter? The woman whispered, recalling Jack's words he had just said to her. And she answered herself. It all matters. She left the dressing room without turning off the light and leaving a small gap in the door, indicating that it was not locked. Then she leaned towards Jack and whispered, everything will be okay. You'll see. And a couple of minutes later, she was speeding down the highway, smiling at her thoughts. Oh, she knew Jack well and had no doubt that he was now approaching her dressing room and about to enter. And indeed, he couldn't take his eyes off the enticing light, which Robin seemed to have deliberately left on. She could almost see Jack, who, pushing aside the clothes hangers, stared at the wall where he himself was looking at him. It was one of the few photos of them together with Robin. Young and in love, they hugged, and Robin's hand rested on his. Come in, she mentally demanded of Jack. Look, and as if he could obey her from a distance, he looked and saw other photos of them, not as big, but also pasted on the wall. And then his gaze fell on the folder with documents, on which his name was written. Jack, what does it matter? Robin continued her mental dialogue with him, and he had already opened the folder, and immediately he stumbled upon their wedding photo with Catherine. He also had one at home, but in this photo, someone had carefully cut out Catherine's eyes, and instead, there were two large holes shining. How do you like it? Do you like it? Robin smiled, imagining him flipping through the folder she had been carefully assembling all these years. Meanwhile, Jack was reading the first document attached there. Contract of sale of a tourist product. Tour packages. Tunisia. Alexander Clark. Robin smirked. What does it matter? Jack flipped through and saw a receipt from a jewelry store. A pendant. What does it matter? Robin yelled, gripping the steering wheel, and in Jack's hands was another receipt. A bouquet of white roses. Catherine. To dear Catherine with tenderness. Alexander. And here are the documents for the purchase of a house. What does it matter? Robin continued to shout. Everything matters. Meanwhile, Jack was reading the headline of a newspaper article. Winner of the annual shooting championship. In the photo was Robin. He couldn't fail to recognize her. Robin Baker, he read, feeling his forehead covered in sweat. The shooting champion was declared insane. He opened the case where Robin's gun should have been and saw that it wasn't there, and she wasn't shouting anymore, but hissing through her teeth. Everything matters. Everything. 5 minutes later, she pulled up to the house where Alexander was already waiting for her. So, is everything in order? She asked. And suddenly she noticed scratches on his face. Oh, what's this? She wanted to touch them, but he moved her hand aside. It's nothing serious. I wouldn't advise going to her. I have a way to calm her down, Robin said calmly, and headed for the steps leading to the house. Robin, Alexander called after her. You know, I don't like this. This is your business. And moreover, it doesn't concern me. I'm leaving. He tossed a bunch of keys at her feet. Running away. She smirked. Why would I run away? He asked. Well, how else? She took a few steps back toward him. You've got a kidnapping charge hanging over you now. Or do you think the kids at school didn't remember the uncle who took Roger? What nonsense are you talking? Kidnapping. In a single leap, Alexander bridged the distance between them and pinned her against the wall. Maybe you'll hit me, She calmly asked him. He stepped back. Robin didn't expect anything else, so she ordered him, "Stay here. It's in your best interest. Leave when I tell you. Let's go. Take Roger upstairs. I need to talk to her." She went into the house, and Alexander sank onto the steps, reached out, and picked up the keys Robin had thrown. Suddenly, that night came back to him when he didn't notice a person on the road and hit him at full speed. Robin was with him. She jumped out of the car and ran to the motionless body on the asphalt. "What have you done? What have you done? My God, you killed him!" She screamed, beside herself with horror. "My God, he's dead. He's dead. Call the police. Quickly. Call the police. Let's go." He wasn't going to take responsibility for what he'd done and pulled the girl toward the car. "Where are we going?" she screamed, struggling out of his grip. "Let's go, you idiot," he yelled. "Let's go." But she didn't hear him. "He's dead. Can't you see? Let's go." "I'm not going." She grabbed her cheek, breathing heavily from fear and pain. Then she took out her phone and recorded everything. Blood was flowing from her nose, and she pressed her hand against her face. "Let's go. Let's go," Alexander shouted again. "Quick, get in the car. Come on, faster." The engine roared, and the car dissolved into the night, leaving a lifeless body on the deserted road. That's when he fell into Robin's trap, and now, like a faithful dog, had to obey all her commands. Pushing the vision away, he got up and followed her. Seeing Alexander, Catherine and Roger stood up from the couch. He addressed the boy without looking at his mother. "Roger, I turned on the computer upstairs. Go play. Your mom and I need to talk." "He's not going anywhere," Catherine declared. "Do you want the child to hear everything?" Alexander could be persuasive, and after a brief pause, Catherine told her son, "Go. Your Uncle Alexander and I really need to talk." But as the boy left, she turned to her former lover and looked him straight in the eye without fear. "Truth is, I have nothing to talk to you about." "Nor do I," he declared unexpectedly. "And I won't be the one talking." Catherine didn't understand what he meant. But before she could ask, Robin appeared in the doorway, leaning against the door frame. "Well, hello, friend. You." Catherine shifted her gaze from her to Alexander, then back to Robin. He didn't wait for their conversation to finish and left. Robin smirked, giving him a quick glance. "He looked better in shorts and shirtless, didn't he?" She smiled, remembering how Alexander and Catherine lay naked by the fire on the sand, seeing only each other, and she stood slightly aside, hidden in the darkness of the night, smiling, realizing that her plan had already begun to unfold. "You had a good time with him?" she asked Catherine, her eyes mocking. Well, Catherine was at a loss. Only now was she beginning to understand the meaning of everything that had happened. "So, you orchestrated all this?" "Yes, I did," Robin agreed and added, "I did you a big favor. Because you would have split up with Jack sooner or later anyway." Catherine pressed her hand to her lips. "Goodness. What does Jack have to do with this? What are you trying to say?" Both of them were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't hear Alexander open the window and whisper to the boy, "Run away from here." He didn't need to be asked twice. He jumped into the yard and disappeared behind the gates. Meanwhile, boiling with anger, Robin approached Catherine and looked her straight in the face. "Listen to me. I always listened to you when you talked about your wonderful husband. But he's an idiot. Because he couldn't see his own happiness." "What happiness?" Catherine backed away from Robin, who kept advancing towards her, repeating her words as if rehearsed. "What happiness? But it's me. I fell in love with him from the first year and followed him everywhere. It's me who sat behind him in class to admire the back of his head. It's me who borrowed his notes to decipher his handwriting. And I volunteered to answer after him during exams because I wanted to sit on the chair he was sitting on. And that's why he should have married me." "Robin," Catherine tried to stop this torrent on me. Robin shouted. Robin, you're delusional. Catherine's voice trembled. I'm not delusional. I'm not delusional anymore. Robin screamed. I was delusional for many years. I thought we would be happy together. And when he hugged me and kissed me, when was that? Catherine was bewildered. It was 10 years ago. But it happened. And I remember how he looked at me. I remember. And he hasn't forgotten about it. Robin was ready to pounce on her rival. I didn't know. Catherine mumbled. You didn't know. Robin couldn't calm down. Because I asked him not to tell you. Not to ruin our strong female friendship. So, you stole the documents. Catherine guessed. You stole the documents. Robin said calmly. And you were having fun with your lover at the dacha. And what infuriated your husband the most was that his son was in the next room playing on the computer. He was furious about that. And that's why he killed you, your lover, and then committed suicide. She finished her speech, whispering the last words into Catherine's ear. So, Jack is he too? Catherine asked. He'll be he soon. Robin replied. She reached for the gun, but Catherine pushed her, and Robin struggled to stay on her feet. Seizing the moment, Catherine dashed out of the room. Meanwhile, Roger had already run out onto the highway and began waving his arms to stop a passing car. Several vehicles zoomed past him, but one stopped, and the boy immediately climbed into its cabin. Finally feeling safe, Robin straightened up, wiped the thick trickle of blood from her nose, then cocked the pistol. She followed Catherine, who, upon encountering Alexander, lunged at him. Where's Roger? Where's Roger? She brandished the gun. I'm asking you, what gun are you talking about? Calm down, he yelled, gripping Catherine's wrists in his hands. She has a gun. She has a gun. Catherine screamed, and then again shot deafened her, and Alexander instantly released his grip, falling to the floor. Catherine screamed in horror, while Robin aimed the barrel in her direction. Well, it's your turn now, friend. Jack, arriving at the house, didn't hear those words. But when he burst into the room, Robin repeated them as if for him. Well, it's your turn now, friend. Freeze, she ordered Jack. Jack, she's sick. Catherine gasped, seeing her husband. Enough. Everything. Jack said calmly. Robin, what are you doing? Everything's fine. Calm down, Robin. Wait. What's wrong with you, Robin? Wait. Calm down. You don't need her, right? You need me. Let's talk. Okay. Jack's calm tone momentarily pacified Robin, and she asked him, talk? About what? What are we going to talk about? But then anger engulfed her again. About us remaining friends. A shot knocked Jack down, and a bloody stain spread on his light trousers at the thigh. About it not mattering. Everything matters. The next bullet hit his shoulder. He screamed, and that scream seemed to awaken unknown strength in Catherine. She lunged at Robin, wresting the gun from her grip, and it flew towards Jack. Robin struck Catherine, who also decided to fight to the end, but the odds were not in her favor, and Robin leaned over her for the final blow. Jack reached for the gun and, losing consciousness from the pain, pulled the trigger. The impact threw Robin against the wall, and she looked in surprise at the crimson stain spreading across her blouse. Without uttering a sound, she quietly collapsed, sliding down the stairs. A few minutes later, Roger returned to the house with the police and an ambulance. As if knowing that his mother would still need his help, the gentle sea lapped at Catherine's feet, and she, dozing off on the lounge chair, woke up abruptly and called out to her husband. Oh, Jack. He was instantly by her side. Catherine, what's wrong? Another nightmare. I'll never forget that horror. She sighed. Robin again. Jack sadly smiled, referring to Robin. She appears in every dream, Catherine said. It'll all be over soon. Jack kissed his wife. You know, turns out, vacationing is pretty great. Really? She laughed. Yeah. Jack nodded and kissed her again. At that moment, a ball rolled up to her lounge chair. "Oh, how about playing some volleyball?" Jack suggested. Catherine didn't respond. She just kissed him. Now, she was simply happy and wouldn't trade this happiness for anything. Never. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the beach, Catherine and Jack stood hand in hand, watching the waves dance along the shore. In that serene moment, with the gentle breeze caressing their faces, they knew that they had conquered the darkness of the past together. With a renewed sense of gratitude for each other and the life they had built, they embraced, their hearts overflowing with love and hope for the future. For in the end, it wasn't the trials they faced that defined them, but rather the strength of their bond and the unwavering light of their love that illuminated their path forward. And so, as they walked into the fading light, their footsteps harmonizing with the rhythm of the waves, Catherine and Jack knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand, forever bound by the unbreakable ties